Tonight, we're going to take a long, slow journey back in time, to the cold, muddy, and brutally hard world of the Vikings. Not the ones you see in movies. No heroes with shiny swords or epic speeches. No feasts in golden halls. Just the real, gritty life of an ordinary person trying to survive in a place where comfort didn't exist and danger never went away. So before you get comfortable, subscribe to the channel and like the video and comment down where are you watching from and at what time. So settle in, get cozy, and let your mind drift. Because tonight, we're going to talk about why you wouldn't last a single day as a Viking. It starts before the sun is even up. Long before you'd normally roll over in your warm bed and check your phone. Except here, you don't have a bed. You don't have a mattress. You don't have a phone. You don't even have a pillow. You have a damp pile of animal skins, slightly stiff and a little too musty, spread out over a wooden frame that passes for a bed. But it doesn't feel like a bed. Not even close. It feels like sleeping on a cold bench, because it basically is. The air is thick with smoke. Not a little bit of smoke like you might get from a candle or a fireplace crackling peacefully in the corner. No, this is the kind of smoke that seeps into your eyes and makes them sting. The kind that clings to your clothes and crawls down your throat until your chest feels tight. Your first breath in the morning isn't fresh. It's gritty. Warm from your own exhale and stale with soot and the scent of too many people packed too close together. You're waking up in a Viking longhouse, and it's not the cozy, romantic version you've seen in the movies. There's no clean fur rug, no fresh bread smell, no peaceful harp music playing in the background. It's a long, narrow building made mostly of wood and turf, with thick beams overhead and low, smoky rafters above your head. The roof is covered in layers of thatch or turf that sag slightly in places from the weight of rain or snow. And the walls? They don't keep out much. Not the wind, not the bugs, not the noise. It's cold. Not just a little chilly, but the kind of cold that makes your bones ache before you even move. Your breath curls into a pale cloud in front of your face. You can feel the frost clinging to the edge of your blanket, the damp creeping into your sleeves, the ache in your fingers already starting and you haven't even sat up yet. There's a fire burning in the center of the room, a wide, shallow pit where the coals glow red and a few logs hiss and spit as they burn. But the fire doesn't give off much light, and it doesn't do a great job of heating the place either. The smoke rises slowly, heavy and grey, and just kind of hangs around in the air. It doesn't have a proper chimney to escape through, just a hole in the roof somewhere that lets out some smoke and lets in a whole lot of cold. You cough. Quietly at first, trying not to wake anyone. But then harder, because the smoke is in your lungs and it's thick and bitter. It tastes like burned meat and old pine sap. Someone else groans and shifts nearby. Maybe your cousin, maybe some neighbor's kid, maybe just someone your family took in for the winter because their house collapsed in a storm. You don't have your own room. No one does. Privacy is a luxury nobody has time for. You're surrounded by sleeping bodies, packed in close together like bundles of firewood. Some are snoring. Some are just breathing softly, turned away under furs that still smell faintly of the animals they once belonged to. You hear someone muttering in their sleep, something about the sea. Another person is having a bad dream and murmuring about trolls. You don't really want to know what they're dreaming about. You pull your fur tighter and try to rub some warmth into your arms, but it's not helping much. Your legs are stiff. Your back hurts. You slept curled up to keep the warmth in, and now your joints are paying the price. You're not even 30, but your spine feels like it's already been through a few too many battles. You haven't bathed in days, maybe longer, and your clothes smell like wood smoke, sweat, and whatever died in the hay recently. You reach for your boots, but they're not at the end of your bed. They're never where you think you left them. Someone probably moved them in the night. Maybe one of the kids took them because theirs was still wet. Or maybe one of the dogs dragged them away. Either way, you're not putting them on yet. Not until you find them. And that means getting out from under your fur and stepping into the freezing air with bare feet. You push back the hide and sit up slowly, trying not to let the cold hit you all at once. It does anyway. It feels like someone slapped you with a block of ice. You shiver hard, wrapping your arms around yourself and blinking against the smoke that makes your eyes water. You can hear movement now. Someone coughing across the longhouse. Someone else stirring the fire, trying to coax a bit more heat out of it before the sun rises. You hear the creak of wood as a bench shifts, and then the soft thunk of someone's head hitting a low beam as they stand up too quickly. It's a morning ritual. The same sounds every day. No one says good morning. No one asks how you slept. Because it doesn't matter. You slept. That's enough. A few chickens cluck softly from their spot near the door. You don't see them yet, but you know they're there. You hear the quiet rustle of feathers and the occasional peck against the dirt floor. A goat bleats low from behind a screen in the corner, probably hungry. Everyone's hungry. Always. You take another deep breath, and again it's full of smoke and sweat and wet wood and whatever someone ate last night that didn't agree with them. The air is heavy with it. There's no way around it. This is what you breathe. This is what you wake up to. Your stomach turns a little. Not from illness, but just from the sourness of it all. It's hard to want to eat anything when your mouth already tastes like ashes and your nose is full of smoke. But the day's begun. Whether you like it or not. You think maybe, just maybe, this morning will be easier. Maybe the wind won't cut through your tunic like a knife. Maybe the food won't make your teeth hurt. Maybe your boots will still be dry. But probably not. Because this is Viking life. And this is just the start. You wake up in that cold, smoky longhouse, still shivering, and you realize you're not alone, not just with the people crammed in around you, but with an entire army of tiny, relentless creatures. Fleas. Hundreds of them. And then, somewhere nearby, a few chickens are scratching around in the dirt floor, pecking and clucking without a care in the world. Imagine trying to sleep when every inch of your skin itches like mad, as if invisible hands are constantly crawling over you. Fleas are merciless. They don't just bite once or twice. They leap around, biting over and over again, searching for that sweet spot on your skin to sink their teeth in and suck your blood. No matter how often you slap or scratch, they keep coming back, as if they own you. And truth is, they pretty much do. Your clothes don't protect you much either. Linen or wool was the best you could get, but those fabrics are more like flea playgrounds than any kind of armor. Fleas burrow deep inside the folds, hiding in the seams, feasting on you while you're completely helpless. No bug spray, no flea collars, no special lotions. Just itchy, painful bites that swell and sometimes get infected. Imagine waking up every single morning with your skin red and raw, knowing it'll only get worse by bedtime. And then there's the smell. Fleas thrive in these cramped, smoky environments because the longhouse isn't just filled with people, but also with animals. Chickens cluck and shuffle in the dirt just a few feet away from where you're trying to find a dry spot to sit. They leave their droppings everywhere, and the fleas come from them too. The chickens are hardly clean creatures. They're part of the ecosystem in the longhouse, a messy, smelly ecosystem. And it's not just fleas. Lice are a constant plague too. They crawl through your hair and burrow into your scalp, making it feel like your head is full of tiny spiders. Imagine trying to comb through your hair, only to find more bugs hiding inside tangled knots. The Vikings didn't have shampoo or any fancy hair treatments. Washing your hair was rare, and lice thrived on that. The chickens themselves are more than a nuisance. They cluck loudly in the middle of the night sometimes, flapping their wings and scratching at the dirt floor, waking everyone up. You might try to shoo them away, but there's nowhere to put them. The longhouse isn't spacious enough for chickens to live outside. They wander around, pecking at scraps of food and sometimes flying up on the benches or even on people's laps. That's just the way it was, animals and humans packed together in one smoky, dirty space. Sometimes rats or mice scurry through the corners of the longhouse, too. You catch glimpses of them darting under the benches, and you know they're looking for crumbs or food scraps. They bring their own diseases and fleas, adding even more misery to the cramped conditions. The floors are never clean. Dirt mixed with straw, mixed with old food scraps and animal dung, make it sticky and wet in spots. Fleas jump from the dirt floor up into your clothes and skin. The chickens scratch around, stirring up dust and feathers, making the air even more thick and hard to breathe. You lie there, trying to ignore the itching and the sounds, but it's impossible. You feel the tiny bites on your arms and legs, the small jumps on your ankles. You try to move your feet, only to find fleas jumping onto your toes. You want to brush them off, but they're too many, and they're too fast. There's no escape, no relief. Every night is the same battle with the tiny invaders. Your body is covered in red marks and scabs from where you scratched too hard in your sleep. You know the itching won't stop, not until you get sick or die, or maybe just get lucky and move somewhere cleaner. But that's rare. Living with all those fleas and chickens inside the same longhouse means accepting that you will be itchy and uncomfortable all the time. It means waking up in the morning feeling sore, your skin raw from scratching, your clothes stained with sweat and dirt and blood from the bites. It means feeling like you're never really clean, no matter how much you try. And that's just the start of your day. You wake up itchy and sore, still covered in the bites from those fleas, surrounded by the clamoring of chickens and the smell of smoke and sweat. Your body aches, your joints stiff from sleeping on rough animal skins, your skin gritty and grimy from a night in the cold, smoky longhouse filled with dozens of people and animals. But now the day really begins, and it's not with a comforting cup of coffee or a warm breakfast like you might hope for. There's no steaming mug to wake you up, no rich aroma of baked bread filling the air, and definitely no soap to freshen you up. In fact, none of those things even exist for you right now. First, the coffee. We take it for granted today, that morning ritual of brewing some beans, savoring the warmth and caffeine as it rolls down your throat, waking up your brain and body gently but effectively. The Vikings, though, had no coffee. Coffee wasn't even known in Europe yet. No tea either. Their mornings began with nothing hot to drink, no quick jolt of energy to push away sleepiness or clear their minds. Instead, you might have a cold, dull morning, where your senses are still muddled and your limbs heavy. Your mouth tastes dry and bad, the stale smoke hanging in your throat, your breath rough and rank. You might swallow hard, but there's nothing to help that dryness, no hot liquid to wash away the grit or stir your sluggish mind awake. Next is breakfast. The word might even feel strange here, because for Vikings, breakfast wasn't a feast or even a light meal to start the day. Most often, it was nothing. Sometimes a piece of dry bread, maybe dipped in a bit of sour milk or cold water, or perhaps some cold, leftover stew that had been sitting overnight, thick and unappetizing. Food was scarce and precious, so wasting it was not an option, but the morning meal rarely provided much comfort or nourishment. The main meals happened later in the day, usually midday or evening. So, waking up without breakfast means starting your day already a little hungry, with an empty stomach that's going to gnaw at you for hours. Imagine trying to gather the strength to work, to fight, or to row your warship with your belly rumbling and your body craving fuel. Now, soap. This one might be even harder to imagine. Today, soap is something we use every day without thinking, a simple way to wash off dirt, sweat, and germs. It's a basic part of hygiene and comfort. But Vikings didn't have soap in the way we understand it. They had some natural cleaning agents like wood ash mixed with animal fat that could work as a kind of soap, but it was harsh, smelly, and rarely used for daily washing. So, most Vikings started their days without washing properly. Their hair was oily, their skin covered in layers of sweat, dirt, and grime. You smelled of fish, sweat, smoke, and the animals that shared your longhouse. You might have tried to rinse your face with cold water, but warm water was rare and precious. Bathing was infrequent, sometimes limited to communal bathing spots during warmer months. And even then, it wasn't the relaxing experience we think of now, it was more about necessity than pleasure. No soap meant no way to really clean off the layers of sweat and dirt that built up after a night spent in a smoky room with 100 other people and animals. You were grimy, itchy, and smelly all at once, with your skin probably covered in scabs from flea bites and scratches. So, here you are, starting your day without the comforts we take for granted. No coffee to perk you up, no breakfast to fill your empty stomach, no soap to wash away the grime. Instead, you're cold, hungry, dirty, and itching. You might look around the longhouse at others, some already awake, others still stirring under furs, all preparing to face the long, brutal day ahead. Your muscles ache from yesterday's work or fighting. Your mind is foggy from lack of rest and no morning boost. Your stomach growls softly, reminding you that food won't come for a while. Your skin itches fiercely, making it hard to sit still or focus on anything else. You might feel a creeping sense of despair or frustration. It's easy to wonder how anyone survived like this, day after day, year after year. But this was life for Vikings, tough, relentless, and stripped of all the little luxuries that make mornings bearable. And the day is just beginning. You've woken up itchy and sore, hungry and tired, and still coated in the grime and sweat from yesterday. You know you stink, everyone does. It's the smell of smoke from the longhouse fire, of animal dung from the chickens and pigs that roam freely inside, of your own body sweating under heavy wool, of oil from food that's gone slightly bad, and of the constant musty damp that hangs in the air like a low fog. But you can't just sit in your own filth. You have to clean yourself, not because it's pleasant, but because it's the only way to keep from getting sick or irritating your already flea-bitten skin even more. So you step outside into the icy morning air, your breath coming out in puffs. The sun is barely up. The ground crunches under your bare feet, frozen mud, splinters of straw, old animal droppings, sharp stones poking through the dirt. You move quickly, not out of energy but because the cold bites harder the longer you're still. Nearby, there's a wooden bucket sitting in the frost. Someone filled it earlier, probably from the stream or rainwater collected in the night. It's just sitting there, exposed to the morning chill. The surface of the water has a thin film of ice on top, clear and sharp as glass. You break it with your hand, and the sudden, bone-deep cold shoots straight up your arm like a punch to the nerves. This isn't a bath. This is a shock. There's no warm steam, no scented oils, no soft towel waiting. Just the raw, unforgiving blast of cold water and your own shaking hands. You cup your palms and scoop some of that freezing water up and splash it onto your face. It stings. Not in a refreshing way, in a way that makes you wince, like your skin's being slapped over and over again. Your nose runs instantly. Your lips are already cracked, and now they sting with every droplet. You run your hands over your arms, your chest, trying to rub the grime off, but all the water does is make the dirt wet and sticky. It doesn't rinse away. You can scrub all you want with your fingers or even a handful of rough moss, but the smell doesn't lift. It's just diluted. And your hands are shaking now. Your fingers numb. You can't tell if you're scrubbing your arms or your bones. Your breath hitches in your chest, quick and shallow. You want to stop, but you can't go back into the longhouse stinking like a dead fish when everyone else is trying to scrape off the worst of it too. Social pressure might not be written down, but it's real. You don't want to be the one who smells worse than the pigs. There's no mirror to check if you missed a spot, no towel to dry off. Maybe you brought a wool cloth with you, scratchy and half-damp already from yesterday's wash, and you rub yourself down with it. But the cold doesn't stop. Even after drying off, your skin stays clammy, your fingers red and raw. Your clothes are rough and unwashed, and now you're pulling them back onto skin that's still damp and sensitive. The wool scratches, the seams dig in, and every part of you feels worse than before you started. And you've just done the bare minimum. Maybe you washed your face, neck, arms, hands. Anything more would take longer and be even colder. Full baths were rare and reserved for better weather, or for trips to the public bathhouse if you lived near one. But in the harsh morning like this, you just endure what you can. And if you're on the road, traveling, at sea, forget about washing. You might go days, weeks even, without water touching your skin. Dirt and sweat cake into every crease of your body, the smell getting stronger by the day. Your scalp itches with lice. Your nails are lined with grime. Your breath smells like whatever you ate last, if you've eaten at all. Back at the bucket, your hands finally fall still. You're done. Not because you're clean, but because you've reached your limit. Your body is too cold to keep going, and you have a full day of labor ahead. You return to the longhouse, shivering and dripping, already regretting the cold splash but knowing you'll have to do it again tomorrow. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll skip it next time, like so many do. Maybe you'll choose warmth over cleanliness, even if it means stinking like smoke and sweat for the rest of the week. Because in Viking life, the choice wasn't between comfort and discomfort. It was between discomfort and even more discomfort. And an ice-cold wash in the dead of morning was just another test of how much you could take before your body or your spirit gave out. You've barely dried off from that icy bucket splash. Your skin's still cold and raw, your fingers tingling from numbness. And now, with no shoes, because most people didn't have proper shoes, or if they did, they didn't wear them indoors, you step outside again, onto the hardened, uneven ground. It's not pavement. It's not clean. It's just a mix of dirt, straw, and animal waste, half frozen from the night chill and rutted from the constant traffic of pigs, chickens, and humans all stomping over it. The moment your bare foot touches the ground, a jolt shoots up your leg. The mud isn't soft. Not anymore. It's frozen in ridges and patches, like walking on lumpy, cracked stone. Every step stabs at your feet. Your soles are already tough from years of walking barefoot, but they're not immune to the cold or the sharp edges of frost-hardened debris. You curl your toes out of instinct, but there's nowhere to hide them. You have to keep walking. Underfoot, there's no clean path. The longhouse opens into a yard shared by animals and people alike. Chickens peck at scraps and beetles, oblivious to the mess they leave behind. Goats bleat nearby, and pigs grunt lazily as they shuffle around, dropping dung wherever they please. You step carefully, but it's impossible to avoid everything. There's dried droppings that crumble into dust, and fresh piles that squish unpleasantly between your toes. And it stinks. Not in a faint, far-off way, but sharp and immediate. The mix of animal waste, old food scraps, rotting straw, and the ever-present smell of smoke and sweat hits your nose with every step. You breathe through your mouth, but even that doesn't help. The taste of it seems to cling to your tongue. And remember, this is your home. This is your yard. There's no corner of Viking life untouched by these smells and textures. The mud here isn't just dirt. It's soaked through with everything that gets thrown out or spat on or dropped: blood from a recent slaughter, the sour remains of old milk, even ashes from the hearth fire. It sticks to your skin in heavy clumps, clings under your toenails, and doesn't let go. You wipe your foot on a patch of straw, but it only makes things worse. The straw is damp too, soggy and foul-smelling, and it leaves scratchy bits stuck to your wet skin. You try walking faster, but that means hitting every sharp rock and broken twig embedded in the muck. A splinter jabs into your heel. You wince and limp. There's no clean towel, no bandage, no ointment waiting. You pull the splinter out with dirty fingers, smear the blood on your leg, and keep moving because what choice do you have? And it's not like you can just stay inside all day. You have chores to do. Maybe you need to chop firewood or fetch water or gather herbs or check traps. All of that means more walking. More contact between your skin and the rough, freezing ground. In the winter months, frostbite is a real risk. Your toes sting, then go numb. If you keep pushing too long in the cold, you might not even feel it when the skin starts to crack or blacken. But you still go. Because that's Viking life. There's no paved road, no boot-wearing luxury, no heated floors or warm socks. The average person didn't own multiple pairs of shoes. Some didn't own any. Leather was expensive and precious. If you did have a pair, you saved them for raids, battles, or trading journeys, not for tramping through the daily filth of home. And here's something else: even when you did have shoes, they weren't much better. Viking shoes were basic, thin leather, maybe held together with some iron nails or stitched cord. They didn't keep water out. They didn't have cushioning. Step into one puddle and your whole foot was soaked through. So often, it just seemed easier to go without. So you walk, barefoot and shivering, muscles clenched, trying not to step on anything sharp, sticky, or steaming. And you realize, slowly, that this isn't an exception. This is normal. This is daily. Morning after morning, day after day, the world under your feet is frozen, filthy, and foul. And you just live with it. You might even forget, after a while, what clean ground feels like. What warm socks feel like. What it's like to not flinch every time you take a step outside. You grow calluses on your feet, sure, but even calluses can't keep out the sting of cold or the stench of manure. You just learn to accept it, or you don't last. Because being a Viking wasn't all heroic sailing and silver hoards. It was stepping into filth before the sun was even up, your feet going numb while chickens chased bugs around your ankles. It was the taste of smoke in your throat, the sting of cold wind on your skin, and the squish of something unidentifiable between your toes. And nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Not your family, not your neighbors, not even your own body. You push through because there's no other choice. You've got work to do. And frozen dung underfoot is just another part of that unforgiving morning. You've made it back inside, feet half numb, stomach hollow, skin still damp from that frigid splash of water. And now, it's time to eat, at least, that's what you tell yourself. But there's no smell of fresh bread baking. No fire crackling cheerfully with a pan of sizzling food. No bowl of warm porridge waiting. You look around and realize with a sinking feeling that breakfast isn't really a thing here. It's more of a desperate rummage through whatever didn't rot overnight. You reach into the storage bin, the one tucked against the longhouse wall, covered with a rough linen cloth to keep the mice out, not that it always works. Inside are a few lumps of old bread. Dense, dark, coarse loaves. Nothing like the soft, golden, yeast-fluffy kind you've seen in bakeries or imagined from stories. Viking bread was heavy stuff. Made with whatever flour was on hand, barley, rye, sometimes oats if you were lucky, and bulked out with bits of ground-up tree bark, mashed beans, or even moss if the grain was running low. It's hard. Not crusty like artisan bread, but hard like dried-out clay. You pick up a piece. It doesn't smell moldy, which is a good sign. But it doesn't smell like anything else either. It's got that bland, flat odor of something that's been around a while. You squeeze it and it barely gives. The surface is cracked. The edges feel like they could cut your lip if you bite wrong. And it's cold, like everything else around you. Nothing is warm, except your own breath. You crack the loaf in half, and that's when you see them. Little white wrigglers, tucked just under the surface. Maybe a couple. Maybe more. You squint and look again. Yep. Worms. Not a horror movie infestation, but enough to know this bread's been sitting too long in too much damp. The storage conditions weren't great. Nothing really keeps things dry when the roof leaks and the air is soaked with smoke and wet wool. And so you've got stowaways in your breakfast. Now comes the question, do you eat around them, or do you eat them? You could try picking them out. That's what most people did. You pluck at them with fingers that are still tingling from the cold, nails blackened with dirt. They squirm a little, or maybe that's your imagination. You flick them onto the floor, or into the fire if you're feeling dramatic. 1, 2, 3. Then you look at the bread again and realize you probably didn't find them all. Some are buried deeper. Some you won't notice until you take a bite and feel the unexpected squish against your teeth. But you're starving. You haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon, and that wasn't much either. Some cold gruel, a scrap of dried fish, and a sliver of old cheese that might have been older than your last haircut. Your stomach's already twisting, not just from hunger but from dread. You don't want to do this. But you also know that if you skip this, the next chance to eat might not come until nightfall, and even that depends on the weather, the success of the hunt, and whether or not someone decides to share their portion. So you bite. The bread is tough. Dry around the edges, a little chewy near the center. It tastes like nothing, mostly. Like old grain. A little sour. A little musty. There's grit in it, grit from the grindstone, which always left little bits of rock dust in every batch of flour. Your teeth scrape over it, and it's like chewing sand. If you're lucky, you only chip a tooth a little. If not, you'll spend the rest of the day worrying about the dull ache deep in your jaw. You find another worm as you chew. You spit it out. Maybe you just swallow and pretend you didn't notice. There's no butter to smear on it. No jam. No honey, unless your household has bees and they haven't all died off this season. Most of the butter that exists is salty and sour and on the verge of going rancid, if it's not there already. Even salt is expensive. You probably only use it sparingly. And forget spices. Black pepper was a treasure. Cinnamon might as well be magic. You've got bread. And worms. And hunger. Sometimes, if there's leftover broth from the night before, you can dip the bread in it to soften it up. That helps. A little. But most mornings, there's no broth. Just you, your stale loaf, and your ability to pretend it doesn't taste like mold and despair. You don't complain. No one does. Complaining gets you nothing except extra chores and a glare from your mother or the chieftain or whoever runs your longhouse. This is food. You're lucky to have it. Plenty don't. Plenty have already buried loved ones who starved last winter. And there's always another winter coming. So you finish the bread. You chew it slowly. You ignore the weird textures. You push aside the thought of how long it's been since that loaf was baked. You scrape the last crumbs off your palm with your teeth. And you wish, for just a second, that you had never wished to live like a Viking. That maybe the stories of feasting and honor left out the part where you had to swallow bugs to survive. And with your hunger dulled but never really satisfied, you wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, stand up, and prepare for whatever awful task comes next. Because breakfast may be done, but the hardest part of the day hasn't even started yet. You've barely finished choking down that stale, wormy bread when someone calls your name. It's not a request, it's an order. You know what it means before you even look up. You're needed at the docks. Again. There's a longship to move, and they need everyone. No excuses. No rest. No maybe later. It doesn't matter if your legs are sore, your arms are tired, your hands are cracked and blistered. The ship is going out, and you're going with it. You trudge toward the water, your feet aching with every step. The icy ground, the jagged stones, the wet filth underfoot, none of that has gone away. But now, instead of chores around the longhouse, you've got a day of rowing ahead of you. Hours of it. Back-breaking, rhythm-breaking, bone-deep rowing. And you're not a guest on that longship. You're the engine. You reach the shore and see the others already gathering. Some are older, broad-backed with weathered faces. Some are younger, wiry and hungry-looking. Everyone's quiet. No one's thrilled. This isn't one of those legendary voyages the Skalds love to sing about. It's not a raid or a conquest. It's moving the ship, traveling to trade, heading out to fish, or transporting supplies. Mundane, grueling, utterly exhausting. But necessary. The longship looms in front of you, long and narrow, sleek like a dagger. Beautiful from a distance. But the closer you get, the less you see beauty and the more you see labor. Each bench is narrow, each oar heavy. The wood is rough, worn smooth in some places from constant use, but still splintered in others. There's no cushion. No padding. You'll be sitting on bare timber, wedged between men who may not have bathed in a week, or ever. You climb aboard. You take your place. And when the call comes, you grip the oar with cold, raw fingers and begin to row. The first few strokes are manageable. You find the rhythm. You fall in line with the others. The oars dip into the water as one. It's almost elegant, like a dance. But dances are short and sweet. This isn't. This is hours. Your arms start to burn within minutes. Not just sore, but sharp, deep ache. Your shoulders knot up. Your lower back screams. The bench is unforgiving. Your legs are bent at an awkward angle, and there's nowhere to shift for relief. The wind off the water cuts through your clothes like they're nothing. Your fingers lose feeling, then come alive again with painful pins and needles. The worst part? You're not allowed to stop. There's no taking 5. No stepping away. No sipping water or stretching your legs or rubbing your wrists. If you fall out of rhythm, you throw everyone off. If you drop your oar, someone yells. If you slow down, you feel the weight of a dozen angry glares. This ship depends on everyone doing their part without fail. Every stroke must hit. Every motion must match. It's discipline by pressure, not choice. You want to quit. Your hands have blistered and burst. You can feel the skin tearing, the blood smearing on the wood. You grit your teeth and row harder. The pain becomes background noise. The smell, sweat, salt, unwashed bodies, grows stronger. Some guys spit over the side. Some groan with each stroke. No one talks. The only sound is oar against water, bodies creaking, waves slapping against the hull. Sometimes there's a drum. Someone banging a rhythm to keep everyone in sync. Sometimes it's just the call of the lead rower. Either way, there's a pulse you can't ignore. You row to that beat. And when it gets faster, you don't argue, you just try to keep up. Hours pass. Your arms feel like ropes, barely connected to your body. Your spine feels bent in two. Your hands are raw, fingers locking up. And you're still not done. You row through spray and wind and silence. You row while your vision blurs from sweat and exhaustion. You row until you forget you're a person and become just another part of the ship. Wood, flesh, and pain. And here's the kicker. This isn't some punishment. This isn't the worst day ever. This is normal. The Vikings didn't have engines. They didn't have motors or sails that always worked. When there was no wind, the only way to move was muscle. And when they had to get somewhere, whether it was to trade, raid, or just make it home, you were expected to do your part. Rain or shine. Sore or sick. Young or old. Even seasoned warriors, even men with scars and stories and loot, had to row. No one was above it. And if you couldn't keep up, if you were too weak or slow or soft, you got replaced. Or worse, you didn't come along. You were left behind. And in Viking culture, being left behind was a kind of death all its own. There's also the fear. Because every time you're rowing, you know, this ship could be attacked. A storm could rise. You might crash on rocks, or get pulled into enemy waters. And if that happens, you need strength left in your arms. You need to be able to fight or paddle like your life depends on it. Because it does. Eventually, the call comes to stop. You almost collapse right there on the bench. Your hands are shaking. Your arms are jelly. You're soaked in sweat, stinking, gasping. You stand, and every joint in your body protests. And even now, there's no applause. No congratulations. Just a grunt from the man in charge, maybe a nod. Then someone hands you a bucket to bail water, or tells you to go drag something heavy from shore. Because you're still not done. And tomorrow, you'll row again. No protein shakes. No massages. No clean water bottle or post-workout snack. Just pain. And duty. And the knowledge that if you stop, someone else has to row harder to make up for you. So next time you hear the romantic tales of fearless Vikings gliding over northern seas, think of this. Behind every elegant sail and carved dragonhead was a deck full of exhausted, blistered humans pulling oars until their arms nearly gave out. And you wouldn't last 10 minutes. You're still sore from rowing. Your hands are cracked open from gripping that heavy all day. Your shoulders feel like they've been torn from their sockets, and the last decent sleep you got was, well, maybe you've never had one. But now you're being handed a sword. Or an axe. Or maybe just a wooden club if you're unlucky. And there's no let's train first moment. No stretching. No warm-up. Just a shout, a scramble, and the knowledge that today might be the day you die. Because today, you're facing a shield wall. Now, in stories, they make it sound brave. Noble. Vikings locking shields together in a tight line, holding firm against the enemy, roaring like thunder across the field. And yeah, from far away it probably did look impressive. Like something from a saga. But you're not far away. You're right there. Right in front of it. And let me tell you, there is nothing poetic about staring down a wall of snarling men ready to crush you. The shield wall wasn't just a tactic. It was survival. A living wall of overlapping wooden shields, packed tight, edge to edge. Behind each one was a man with a weapon, and no intention of letting you pass. These weren't cardboard cutouts. These were furious warriors, blood-soaked and battle-hardened, who knew what they were doing. You, on the other hand, barely know how to hold your weapon. You don't have any training. No drills. No armor. Just a few words of encouragement that boil down to don't die. Your heart is racing so hard you feel it in your teeth. Your fingers fumble the grip. You try to remember what you've seen others do. Swing low, aim high, keep moving. But all of that leaves your head the second someone starts blowing a horn and shouting for the charge. And then it happens. You run. Not because you want to. Not because you're brave. Because everyone else is doing it. The shield wall is approaching and there's nowhere to hide. So you scream and sprint, legs slipping in the mud, breath burning your lungs, weapon flailing in front of you like it knows better than you do. And then, crack. The two lines collide. It doesn't feel like battle. It feels like hitting a wall with your face. Shields slam against shields. Bones crunch. You feel someone's elbow dig into your ribs. You're not swinging your weapon, you're just trying to stay upright. It's chaos. Nothing like in the movies. There's no music. No slow motion. Just yelling and pain and the hot, sickening smell of sweat and blood and fear. You try to strike. Your arm is too slow. Your blow glances off someone's shield like a child hitting a tree. You feel a club slam into your thigh and you drop to one knee. A boot catches your jaw. Someone is on top of you. You can't see. You can't breathe. You hear screaming, some of it might be your own. And that shield wall? It's still moving. Because that's the terrifying part. The shield wall doesn't just stand still. It advances. Slowly, relentlessly. Like a human steamroller, it marches forward. Step by step. And if you're in the way, if you fall, if you trip, if you hesitate, it rolls over you. You scramble up just in time to see someone next to you take a spear straight through the gut. He gasps once and drops. Another guy screams as a sword bites into his shoulder. There's no pause. No mercy. You're expected to keep fighting. To step over your fallen friends. To push forward, shield raised, even if your hands are too numb to grip it properly. The shields smash again. It's a wall of wood and metal and rage. You're pressed so close to the man beside you that you can feel his heartbeat through the shield. There's no room to swing, barely room to breathe. Someone behind you is shouting at you to push. Someone in front of you is trying to kill you. It's all sweat and struggle and slipping in blood. You hear bones break. You hear men cry for their mothers. You hear someone vomiting in fear. And yet the wall moves forward. If you're lucky, if you're truly lucky, you only get a bruise. Or maybe a shallow cut. If you're not, well, the battlefield doesn't stop just because you dropped your weapon. There's no timeout. No medics. No one's coming to drag you to safety. If you fall and can't get up fast enough, you'll be trampled. Or finished off. Or simply left to bleed into the mud. And the shield wall will keep going. By the time it's over, by the time the battle finally ends, either because one side broke or everyone just collapsed from exhaustion, you're not thinking about glory. You're not thinking about songs or honor or anything like that. You're just grateful to still be breathing. You're shaking, soaked in blood that might not even be yours. Your arms feel like dead weight. Your legs won't stop trembling. You probably can't even hear properly. Your ears are ringing too loud. And for what? A patch of land? A sack of silver? A chieftain's pride? It doesn't matter. The shield wall demanded everything, and you gave it. That's Viking warfare. Not glamorous. Not cinematic. Just brutal, messy, and terrifying. So before you say you could have made it in that world, think again. Could you have stood your ground, shoulder to shoulder, while angry men slammed into you with the force of a charging bull? Could you have kept your balance, kept your grip, kept your nerve, while your friends were dying inches from you? No. You wouldn't last a single clash. Not one heartbeat. There's a sharp pain in your jaw. At first, it's just annoying. A dull ache when you chew, maybe some tenderness near your gums. You ignore it. Because in a Viking world, what else are you going to do? There are no dentists. No clinics. No antiseptics. Pain is just part of daily life. You figure it'll go away on its own. It doesn't. A few days pass, and it gets worse. Now the pain is constant. Throbbing. You can't sleep properly, and eating becomes a chore. Every bite sends a jolt of agony through your face. You try not to chew on that side. You try not to move your jaw too much. You hope maybe it's just something stuck, maybe some gristle or splintered bone from your last meal. So you prod at it with your fingernail. That only makes it worse. Your gum starts to swell. Your whole face starts to feel hot. And now you're not just uncomfortable, you're scared. Because you don't know what's happening. You don't understand infections. You don't know about bacteria. All you know is that something deep inside your head is rotting. And there's no fixing it. Viking remedies for dental problems were, well, not exactly modern medicine. If someone was feeling brave or desperate, they might have a local healer or wise woman take a look. That usually meant herbs, prayers, charms, maybe some kind of poultice made from moss or burnt animal bones. It wouldn't help. It might distract you for a bit, maybe numb the pain for a few hours. But the infection would still be there, growing, spreading. Soon your jaw swells so much you can't close your mouth properly. Your breath smells foul, like something inside you is decaying. Because it is. That tooth isn't just infected anymore. It's dying. The tissue is rotting. The bacteria are spreading into your bloodstream. And you're shivering with a fever, curled up in the corner of a smoky longhouse, unable to eat, barely able to think. No one around you really knows what to do. Your friends might think you're cursed. Maybe they believe you've angered the gods. They'll light a candle or mutter a blessing, but none of that's going to stop what's happening. The only cure they know is to pull the tooth out, but not with tools, not with anesthesia, not in any kind of controlled way. If someone decides to yank it, they'll use a dagger. Or pliers if you're lucky. But more often it's just fingers, force, and a whole lot of screaming. You try to drink water. You can't. It hurts too much. You try to sleep, but the throbbing wakes you up every hour. Days turn to a blur of fever and agony. You press your hands to your face, praying for it to stop. You don't even care about food anymore. You just want the pain to end. And that's when the rot reaches deeper. It's not just your mouth now. Your neck swells. Your eyes puff up. The infection has likely made its way into your jawbone, maybe even closer to your brain. In today's world, you'd be rushed to a hospital. You'd get antibiotics. Maybe surgery. But back then, you'd just fade away. Slowly. Painfully. Eventually, you might die in your sleep. Or from the fever. Or from sepsis, which nobody in your village could name, let alone treat. They'd bury you with a few whispered words, maybe burn some herbs to keep your spirit calm. And that's it. You're gone. All because of a tooth. So when you think about how hard Viking life was, don't just imagine the battles. Don't just picture the sea raids or the sword fights. Think about a single toothache. A simple infection. Something you'd fix in 10 minutes today, killing you in a week back then. That's the kind of world they lived in. Where something so small could be so final. Where pain didn't always come with a cause, and healing didn't always come at all. Could you survive that kind of slow, agonizing decline? No. You wouldn't last a day. You wake up and take a breath, and the air hits you like a punch in the face. It's not just the smoky heaviness of the longhouse fire that's been burning low all night. It's the smell of the people around you, yourself included. The thick, clinging scent of bodies packed close together with no windows, no fresh breeze, and no such thing as personal hygiene. It's the stench of sweat, old furs, dried mud, smoke, mildew, rotting meat, fish oil, and whatever died in the corner weeks ago but no one had time to dig out. This isn't a once-in-a-while thing. This is every day. You smell like this. All the time. Your clothes are filthy. You've worn the same rough, scratchy wool tunic for months now. Maybe you brushed the dirt off once or twice. Maybe you aired it out near a fire. Maybe. But you didn't wash it. Not in water, not with soap. Because soap's a luxury, and water's cold, and most people in your village don't think it matters anyway. Clean clothes don't keep you alive. They don't feed your animals, chop your wood, or help you survive a winter storm. So you stink. And so does everyone else. You know the smell of fish. Now imagine wearing it. Day after day. Imagine scraping dried fish guts off a net with your bare hands, then wiping them on your trousers because there's no rag nearby. Imagine hauling buckets of cod to the drying racks, where the brine sloshes down your boots, soaks your socks, if you have any, and leaves your skin sticky for the rest of the week. Then imagine crawling into bed that night without a bath. Or the next night. Or the next week. You smell like fish. You sleep in it. You wake up in it. And you don't even notice anymore, because that's just life. Now add smoke. Constant smoke. Your longhouse is always smoky because there's a fire going 24/7 in the center. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, and on stormy nights, they cover that with a hide, so it stays in. Your eyes sting. Your throat scratches. Your hair and clothes and blankets and everything you own smell like a campfire that burned a soggy sheep. You don't leave the house and smell the smoke, you are the smoke. And on top of that, sweat. You work hard every day. Not at a desk or walking to a store. You chop wood. You pull nets. You row boats. You haul heavy buckets and sacks and crates and children. There are no showers waiting for you after. No deodorant. No break room. You sweat into your tunic and then wear it again tomorrow. And the day after. You sweat in your boots, your bed, your furs. You sweat in the winter, bundled up under layers. And you sweat even more in the summer when the sun bakes the roof and the air inside is thick enough to chew. You stink. Bad. And when you do finally get to wash, maybe once in a while, it's not like stepping into a clean bathroom with hot water and towels. It's a wooden bucket. Of freezing water. Outside. Maybe you scrub with a handful of moss or sand. That's it. No lather. No shampoo. No soap unless someone happened to make a small lump of it last season. And good luck getting your share of that. Your hair stays greasy. Your fingernails are black. Your armpits smell like sour goat milk and campfire. Your feet smell like a wet sheepskin stuffed with mushrooms and despair. And the thing is, nobody's offended. Nobody's pulling away. Because they smell just as bad as you do. Personal scent isn't something to hide. It's something to accept. The people around you recognize each other by it. If someone smells different, cleaner, even, that's suspicious. That's strange. You're used to this fog of filth that wraps around everyone you meet. Now, imagine trying to live like that. Imagine never getting truly clean. Imagine carrying layers of grime around your skin like armor, crusted on from the last 3 seasons. Imagine the smell of your bed, the animal skins soaked in sweat and smoke and mildew, and the dog that sleeps at your feet, and the lice crawling in the seams. Imagine your breath after weeks of eating onions and rotted fish. Imagine your beard tangled with bits of bread and dried blood from a cut that never fully healed. You think you could handle that? You think a little camping experience qualifies you for Viking life? No chance. You wouldn't last an hour before begging for a bar of soap and a hot shower. Your nose would revolt. Your skin would crawl. You'd be desperate to change your clothes, to brush your teeth, to open a window that doesn't exist. You'd start to realize that comfort isn't just about being warm or full, it's about not reeking like a fish that lost a fight with a campfire. But there's no escape from it here. No fresh laundry, no scented shampoo, no minty toothpaste or deodorant to save you. Just the heavy, sour, constant stink of daily Viking life. And it's not going away. Not today. Not tomorrow. And certainly not until you've lived, and smelled, through the worst of it. You lie down at the end of the day, if you can call it lying down. It's more like curling into a ball on a bed made of straw, sticks, and whatever else was handy. There's no mattress. No pillows. Just a heap of itchy old materials stuffed into a wooden frame, or maybe directly onto the dirt floor. And above you, a fur blanket. That's it. One thick, heavy, smelly fur hide that's supposed to keep you warm in the dead of winter. Except it's damp. Again. It's always damp. The longhouse walls are made of wood and mud and thatch. They do their best, but moisture seeps in no matter what. Rain drips through the ceiling in slow leaks. Snowmelt creeps under the door and turns the floor into mush. Cold clings to the beams and slides down the walls. And your fur, your one precious source of warmth, soaks it all up like a sponge. You try not to think about it, but you can feel it on your skin. That cold, wet heaviness. That clingy, woolly discomfort. You shift your position, trying to find a dry spot, but there isn't one. The hide smells like mildew and wet dog. It's heavy in the worst way, pressing down without providing any real warmth. You pull it tighter anyway, because the air is so cold it stings your face. It creeps down your neck and slips under your tunic. Your fingers are already numb. Your nose is running, but you're too cold to wipe it. Your breath comes out in mist, curling into the air above you. You look up into the dark rafters, wondering how long until morning, wondering how long until your toes stop aching. This isn't some rustic camping trip. This is life. Night after night. Winter after winter. There's no central heating, no electric blanket, no warm cup of cocoa to curl up with. There's just the fire burning low in the center of the longhouse, maybe 10 or 15 feet away from your sleeping spot, and the body heat of the people next to you. If you're lucky, someone's dog or goat is curled up at your feet, offering a little warmth. If you're not lucky, they're curled up on your feet, with fleas hopping from their fur to yours. You don't sleep well. You don't dream sweet dreams. You just drift in and out, half frozen, listening to the wind rattle the door or a rat scurry across the floor. You wrap the damp fur tighter and hope the night passes quickly. You hope your cough doesn't get worse. You hope the sore on your ankle doesn't freeze over again. You hope your wet, moldy blanket doesn't give you another rash. You hope you wake up. Sometimes people don't. Sometimes the cold takes an old man in the night. Or a baby. Or someone who went to bed hungry one too many times and didn't have the strength to make it to sunrise. In the morning, you'll find them stiff and pale, curled up just like you, except they're never moving again. You don't talk about it. You just build the fire higher, wrap the same hide around yourself, and try again the next night. And maybe you think you'd be fine. Maybe you imagine yourself toughing it out. You've slept in a cold room before. You've gone camping. You've wrapped yourself in a sleeping bag on a mountain trail or stayed up late in a frosty cabin. But this isn't the same. There's no escape here. No car waiting at the trailhead. No warm shower back at the lodge. No hot drink or soft towel to look forward to. Just another endless night under damp fur, teeth chattering, nose dripping, body aching. And it wears on you. Not just physically, but mentally. The cold gets inside your head. It saps your will. It steals your comfort, your clarity, your calm. You start to dread bedtime. You start to wonder if you'll ever be warm again. You wonder if this is just what life is now, an endless fight against freezing to death in your own bed. And that's the Viking world. It isn't grand feasts and horned helmets. It's not songs around the fire and tales of gods. It's shivering in the dark with a soggy piece of fur that smells like goat and mildew, hoping tomorrow won't be colder than today. Could you make it through that? Could you handle night after night of damp discomfort and bone-deep chill? Could you drift off to sleep knowing that the fur you're pulling over your head might be soaked through by morning? Probably not. Because this isn't cozy. This isn't romantic. This is survival. And it's cold. Always cold. They're always there. Tiny. Crawling. Biting. You can't see them most of the time, not unless you part your hair just right or catch one skittering across your tunic, but you feel them. Every day. In the back of your neck. In your beard. Around your waist where your belt rubs tight. Between the seams of your clothes. You can scratch until your skin breaks, and it still won't get rid of them. Because lice don't care how much you itch. They're not going anywhere. And nobody else is free of them either. That's the worst part. You can't even complain. Everyone around you is just as infested. Men, women, children, warriors and farmers and slaves. It doesn't matter how strong you are or how clean you try to be. Once they get into your clothes, they stay. They lay eggs in the folds of fabric. They hide in the stitching, in the fur lining, in the seams of your undertunic. You put the same clothes on day after day, and they come crawling right back with you. In the rare moments you take your shirt off, you might spot a few of them racing across your skin. Long, thin, grayish ones, body lice. Or smaller ones, hiding in your hair. And if you happen to sit near a fire and really lean into the warmth, sometimes you'll hear a tiny pop, just a soft snap, because a louse cooked inside your tunic. That's how close they are to your body. That's how constant the infestation is. You try to get rid of them. Of course you do. Everyone does. You sit in the sun, take off your outer layers, and start picking them out one by one. Crushing them between your fingernails. Tossing them into the fire. You might even use a comb if you're lucky enough to have one, something fine-toothed, made from bone or wood. And for a few hours, you think you're making progress. Until the itching comes back. Always. The worst part? They don't just bite. They make your skin raw. Red. Scabby. You wake up some mornings with open sores around your neck, behind your ears, along your thighs. And when you scratch, and of course you scratch, you make it worse. The skin breaks. It bleeds. And in a world without soap or bandages or antibiotics, those little wounds don't just heal up. They fester. They crust over. And they leave scars. Now imagine sleeping like that. Covered in fur that's also crawling with lice. Lying beside people who are just as itchy, all of you tossing and turning and scratching through the night. And no one says anything about it. Because this is just life. And it's not just your clothes, either. Your hair. That's a war zone. Especially in winter, when you can't wash it for months. You try to scratch near the scalp, and your fingernails come away greasy with oil and dead skin and, yes, more lice. The eggs, called nits, cling to the hairs like tiny grains of sand. They don't fall out. You'd have to shave your head or pluck them out one by one, and who has time for that? And even if you did, they'd be back by the next week. You try to get creative. Some people smear their hair with pine tar or ash to kill the lice. Others rub in crushed herbs, hoping the smell drives them away. Some folks even wear little leather pouches filled with dried flowers around their necks, thinking it might help. But nothing truly works. The lice always win. And they're not just on you, either. Your bedding? Full of them. Your fur cloak? Infested. That sack of straw you sleep on? It moves sometimes, just a little, but enough to let you know something's living inside it. You get up in the middle of the night, scratch until your skin burns, and lie back down because there's nothing else you can do. Even when you're sick, they don't leave you alone. Fever. Doesn't matter. You're sweating through your tunic, shaking in a pile of dirty furs, and the lice are still there, feeding, crawling, laying eggs, digging into your raw, sensitive skin. It's misery on top of misery. And if you think you'd be able to resist, if you think you could tough it out, you're wrong. Because this isn't a one-night inconvenience. This is every hour of every day. For weeks. For months. For years. Day. For weeks. For months. For years. You'd get desperate. You'd rip your tunic off in the freezing air just to feel clean for 5 minutes. You'd start scratching so hard you'd bleed. You'd pluck out patches of your own hair. You'd cry at night, quietly, trying not to wake the others, as the lice crept across your body and kept you company in the dark. And no one would come to help. Because they're dealing with it too. You wouldn't last a week like that. You'd lose your mind. You'd break. You'd dream of razors and showers and cotton sheets and hot water, and then you'd wake up, still itching, still crawling, still living with lice. Viking life isn't about glory and axes. Sometimes it's just you and 1,000 biting insects in a filthy tunic, wondering if your skin will ever stop burning. And the answer? No. Not here. Not in this life. It's early. You've been awake since the first hint of grey light slipped through the cracks in the wall, and your stomach has already started to ache. Not because you're starving, although sometimes you are, but because you already know what you're about to eat. And you're dreading it. There's no fire going yet. It went out sometime in the night, or maybe nobody had the energy to keep it alive. The longhouse is still cold, and your fingers are stiff as you crouch beside a wooden bowl, scraping the top crust off what's left of last night's gruel. It's lumpy. It's thin. It's cold, again. And somehow, despite being made from nothing more than crushed grains and water, it smells just a little sour. You hold your breath as you take the first bite. The taste is dull, like wet bark or ground-up straw, but it's the texture that gets you. Gooey. Slippery. Sticky in the back of your throat. You chew more than you need to, just to feel like you're eating something real. You close your eyes and try not to gag. The worst part? You're lucky to have it. This cold, tasteless bowl of mush might be the only thing standing between you and another day of work on an empty stomach. And it's not just one morning, it's every morning. The same meal, over and over again. Grain boiled in water until it turns into a paste. No fruit. No milk. No sugar. Nothing but grey, lukewarm sludge scraped from the bottom of a pot that's never been properly cleaned. You swallow it down because you have to. You've got work ahead, heavy, punishing, endless work, and you need whatever fuel this can give you. But it's not just gruel today. There's also butter. Or something that used to be butter. You pry open a skin pouch that's been tied at the top with a bit of twine, and the smell hits you before you even look inside. It's gone off. Again. Viking butter isn't made in a clean kitchen. It's churned from raw cream by hand, sometimes by foot, and stored in skins or animal bladders. There's no refrigeration. No control over temperature or humidity. Sometimes it keeps for a while. Sometimes it doesn't. And when it goes bad, it doesn't just sour. It turns into something sharp, oily, almost fishy, with veins of green or black creeping through it. You eat it anyway. There's no throwing it away, not unless you're rich or foolish. That rancid lump of fat is still food, and you need the calories. You break off a hunk of hard bread and smear a bit of the butter across the top, trying to avoid the darkest spots. The bread is from 3 days ago, and it's hard enough to chip a tooth, but that's normal. Nobody bakes every day. You're lucky if the loaf isn't covered in a thin layer of mold. You chew slowly, because you have to. The bread won't break down easily. Your jaw aches by the time you've swallowed, but you're too focused on not letting it scrape the roof of your mouth. The butter coats your tongue with a sour slickness that lingers even after you've finished. There's no tea. No water. Just the aftertaste of spoiled milk fat and soggy oats. Sometimes, if you're lucky, someone might have found a few onions or wild herbs to mix in. Maybe a bit of dried fish. But not today. Today it's just the gruel and the butter and the bread that you have to soak in water to make it soft enough to chew. You eat it all. You eat every crumb. Because you don't know when the next meal will be. And this isn't breakfast once in a while. This is every day. No variety. No spice. No indulgence. You eat what you have, and you thank the gods it's not worse. You've heard stories about bad winters where entire families starved. You've seen neighbors chew on tree bark or boil leather just to get something in their stomachs. So this bowl of cold gruel and rancid butter, it's actually a good day. The real hunger comes in waves. And when it does, you don't get to be picky. You stop caring about taste. You stop noticing the sour smell or the gritty texture. You eat to survive. You eat to make it through one more hour of dragging wood or hauling buckets or rowing a ship or turning soil. You're not supposed to enjoy it. Food isn't for pleasure here. It's fuel, and not even good fuel. It's like trying to run an engine on leftover soup and old motor oil. You do what you can with what you're given, and you pray your gut doesn't turn on you in the night. If you're sick, too bad. You eat it anyway. If it's spoiled, still going down. If you drop it in the dirt, brush it off. Dirt's not going to kill you. Starvation will. The Vikings didn't have 3 meals a day. They didn't snack. They didn't sip on hot drinks or sneak pieces of candy. They ate when they could, and when they couldn't, they worked through the hunger. You might get a second helping of gruel at night, lukewarm, maybe with a bone in it, but don't count on it. The portions are small, and everyone is hungry. If you complain, you get nothing. If you steal more, you risk a beating. Your body starts to change. You get lean, not the good kind of lean. The kind where your ribs show and your face sinks in. Your nails get brittle. Your joints start to ache from the lack of fat. You dream about meat. You dream about warm bread with real butter, about eggs, about honey, about coffee, especially coffee. But you wake up to a bowl of grey porridge and the smell of something long past its prime. And that's it. That's breakfast. You'd give up fast. Maybe not on the first day, but definitely by the 3rd or 4th. You'd be tired, light-headed, grumpy. Your stomach would be twisted in knots, but there'd be no relief. No vending machine. No bakery around the corner. No emergency stash. Just more gruel. More butter that smells like a forgotten sock. More chewing until your jaw goes numb. And if you couldn't keep it down? Too bad. You work anyway. The food's not supposed to be delicious. It's supposed to keep you alive. That's all. And barely, at that. You're already exhausted. You haven't slept right in days, maybe weeks. The raid wasn't supposed to be this soon. You were still recovering from a cold, still limping from a slip on wet rock, still aching from hours and hours of rowing. But when the war leader shouted that the sails were going up, you had no choice. You grabbed your gear. You climbed onto the ship. You tried not to think too much. Now you're here. Somewhere on the coast, not far from the edge of a foreign village. Smoke is already drifting from the first few thatched roofs. Someone's knocked over a fence. Pigs are squealing in panic. And it's happening fast. Too fast. The other warriors have fanned out, charging forward with heavy steps and louder screams, axes swinging, blades flashing in the half-light of dawn. You weren't ready for this. Not in the way you hoped. You imagined being brave. You imagined lifting your shield and stepping up beside your fellow fighters like you were meant to be there. Like your heartbeat wouldn't betray you. Like your knees wouldn't shake. But they do. You're not a soldier. You were a farmer last week. A carpenter the week before. You've trained, sure, but it's been mostly in words. Practicing stances. Holding a wooden shield in the safety of a cleared space back home. You've never heard real steel hit bone before. You've never heard someone scream like that and meant it. And then, just ahead of you, your friend is running forward. He's someone you know. You've eaten beside him. Slept near him in the longhouse. You joked with him just yesterday about how awkward he looked when he tried to lift his new axe. His name is still on the tip of your tongue when he moves ahead, his shield lifted, a raw battle cry bursting out of his throat like he's trying to convince himself he's not afraid. You follow. You try to stay close. Maybe because it's easier to be near someone familiar in this chaos. But then it happens. So fast, your brain almost doesn't register it. The man he's running at, a villager defending his land, probably just as terrified, doesn't hesitate. He's already mid-swing, and the angle is too clean. Too fast. There's no time for your friend to duck. No time to block. The blade slices forward in a brutal, diagonal sweep and you see it hit. The sound is wet. Dull. A crunch, a crack, and then silence. Your friend's cry cuts off. Not because he's retreating. Because he's not breathing anymore. Because that sword found its way through his cheek and into the side of his head. It's not dramatic. It's not like the movies. His legs buckle. His shield slips. He makes a noise, almost like a sigh, and crumples straight down, face first, into the dirt. Just gone. 1 second a man. The next, a limp shape on the ground. His axe still clutched in one hand, useless now. His helmet slipping off the back of his head as the blood begins to pool beneath him. You freeze. Just for a heartbeat. Maybe two. Your stomach lurches. The bile hits your throat. You can't look away, even though every instinct is telling you to move, to fight, to protect yourself. But the image is burned there. His mouth half open. Eyes wide and unblinking. That look of disbelief frozen on his face, like even in his last moment he didn't expect it to end this way. And that's when it hits you, there's no glory in this. You'd heard the stories growing up, about warriors who charged into battle with songs in their throats and fire in their eyes. About heroes chosen by Odin himself, pulled into Valhalla with a smile. But nobody told you it would look like this. That it would smell like this. That death would come so fast, so ugly, so final. No music. No honor. Just blood and dirt and silence. You want to scream. But the noise is already everywhere. Steel hitting shields. Hooves thudding on soil. Fires crackling as homes begin to catch. And other people are dying now too, on both sides. You see more bodies hit the ground. Some crawling. Some trying to stand with wounds that should have already killed them. One man is screaming for his wife. Another is trying to hold in his guts with both hands. You should move. You should help. You should swing your axe or lift your shield or just do something. But your arms feel numb. Your legs don't respond. You're stuck in the moment, staring down at what's left of the man you once shared mead with. The man who joked about growing a beard thick enough to braid. The man who was always humming to himself during long rowing trips. And no one cares that he's gone. No one stops. No one kneels beside him. They just keep going, stepping over his body like it's already part of the landscape. He's not a hero. He's not a legend. He's another casualty of a raid that will be forgotten by next week. Another lost name. That's when you realize something even colder. This could be you. And it probably will be. You might survive this raid. But the next one? The one after that? Or maybe it won't even be battle that ends you. Maybe it'll be an infected wound. A fall on the ice. A cough that lingers too long. You're a Viking, but that doesn't mean you're safe. It means you're in danger all the time. No one is going to protect you. Not even the gods. If they're watching, they're silent. If they care, they've got a strange way of showing it. Your life can end just like this, quick, cruel, and without ceremony. And if it does, the only one who might remember your name is the person watching it happen. Just like you are now. The ox is dead. It's not surprising, not really. You saw it coming. The poor thing had been coughing weird for days, moving slower, dragging its weight through the soggy earth with less and less energy. You gave it what feed you could. Rubbed its neck. Whispered a few useless prayers to whatever gods might care. But none of that mattered. Sickness doesn't pause for kind words, and now the ox, your only ox, is lying stiff and cold near the edge of the field, flies already buzzing around its eyes. And the spring plowing still needs to be done. Because the soil doesn't care that your ox is gone. The seeds won't wait. The rains are coming. If you miss the window to turn this land over, your crops won't root, your barley won't grow, and your whole family will be in real trouble by next winter. Maybe even sooner. So now it's you. You wrap the harness straps around your shoulders. Not just to pretend. Not to make some noble show of effort. You do it because there is no one else. No spare animal. No backup plan. No neighbor with a second ox to loan. Everyone's just barely getting by themselves. In fact, they might be eyeing your dead one, wondering if it's worth trying to cut off a leg or two for meat before it rots completely. The wooden plow is clumsy in your hands. It was built to be dragged by a beast, not a man. It's heavier than it looks, heavier than you remember. The iron-tipped blade is dulled from years of use, and the handles are rough with splinters that dig into your palms the moment you start to pull. Your bare feet sink into the wet soil. The earth is still cold from a long winter, and the wind cuts through your tunic like a knife. You lean your entire weight forward, muscles screaming before you even get it to budge. Your back arches. Your arms shake. Your breath comes in hard bursts, and your legs slip constantly on the muddy ground. Every inch of progress feels like dragging a mountain behind you. You think maybe you'll get used to it after a few passes. You don't. You lose track of how many hours go by. The sun rises higher, but the warmth never quite reaches you. Dirt cakes your ankles. Your knees buckle from time to time, and you fall forward into the furrow you've made. Once, you slam your shoulder against the plow handle so hard it leaves a bruise. But you don't stop. You can't. Every bit of this soil that doesn't get turned today is another patch of land that won't feed your family later. There's no reward at the end of this workday. No cold drink. No break to rest and recover. Just more aching. More struggling. Maybe a stale crust of bread by the fire when you finally stumble back into the longhouse. Maybe not even that. And let's not forget, this isn't just one day. You're not pulling this plow for fun, or to prove something. You have to do this every day until the field is done. Until every row is turned. Until every bit of earth is soft and open, ready for the seeds you haven't even cleaned yet. Then you'll have to sow them. Then weed. Then water, by hand. Then wait and pray nothing ruins the crop. A storm. A frost. A wandering herd of pigs. A curse whispered by someone you slighted last year. And God's help you if someone raids the village before harvest time. By midday, your shoulders feel like they've been torn in two. Your spine pulses with pain in strange, sharp ways. Your fingers are starting to swell. Your feet are raw, cut open in places by small stones buried just under the surface of the dirt. You wonder how your body is even keeping upright. There are no shoes, no gloves, no clever tools to lighten the load. There's no strong drink to dull the pain either. You drank the last of it last night because you thought maybe the ox would pull through and you were celebrating early. Big mistake. At one point, you stop to catch your breath and look up. The field stretches out ahead of you, and your heart sinks. You've barely scratched the surface. You're soaked with sweat, even though the air is still bitter. The wind makes your skin sting. There's mud in your mouth, under your fingernails, in your nose. You reek. Not just of dirt, but of the strain, of old effort, new panic, and a body that's been pushed too far too early in the season. But what choice do you have? You can't stop. If the field stays like this, there will be no crops. If there are no crops, there will be no bread. And if there's no bread, well, you've seen what happens to people in the village who don't have food come winter. Some vanish into the woods. Some waste away. Some beg the chieftain and get laughed at or worse. The lucky ones get taken in by kinder neighbors, but there aren't many of those left. So you keep going. You press your face into the wind. Grip the wood tighter. Put one foot in front of the other, pulling the stubborn blade forward like your life depends on it. Because it does. Your muscles stop burning and instead go numb. That's not a good sign. But still, you don't stop. This is what being a Viking really looked like most of the time. Not the raids. Not the silver. Not the mead halls or the songs. Just this. A field. A dead ox. A broken man pulling a plough with his own body while the rest of the world quietly watches and doesn't care if he collapses. And you still think you could last a day. You set out before sunrise, before even the birds stir, carrying what little you've scraped together for trade. A sack of goat cheese wrapped in old cloth, a few carved bone buttons, some dried fish, and a small bundle of wool. It's not much, but it's all you have that might be worth something. The path ahead stretches long and uncertain, a narrow line of dirt and packed mud that winds through frostbitten fields, past cold rivers, and into the quiet nothingness that swallows everything not anchored by smoke or stone. You don't ride a horse. Horses are for chieftains, jarls, and warriors. You walk. Like everyone else who wasn't born into strength or luck or bloodlines that earned them a seat close to the fire. You walk in your rough woolen tunic that smells like old smoke and sheep, and in shoes that are little more than scraps of hide tied together with soggy string. Every step sinks into the half-frozen ground, and your breath forms quick clouds in front of you, the only thing moving besides your shadow. Your feet hurt almost immediately, but that's just normal. You're used to hurting. What you're not used to is knowing that the pain has only just begun. The road is lonely. No singing, no friendly chatter. Just your own footsteps and the weight of what you're carrying. The goatskin sack digs into your shoulder with each mile. You switch sides every so often, but it never really helps. The strap just carves a new ache into the other side. After a few hours, you can feel the bruises blooming under your skin. There's no guarantee anyone will want what you're bringing. The traders in the next village can be greedy. Or worse, indifferent. You've walked all this way before only to be offered a single rusty nail in exchange for something you spent weeks preparing. But you keep going anyway. Because back home, your child has a cough that hasn't gone away. Because you haven't had salt in weeks. Because your last knife broke, and you need a new one or you'll be cutting meat with a rock like an animal. By midday, the sun hangs dull and grey overhead. Your stomach has been growling for hours. You chewed some dried grass earlier, just to distract yourself. It didn't help. Hunger is like an extra weight you carry, along with the cold and the fear that you might return with nothing. Eventually, your path leads into a forest. The trees are thick and the path narrows until you're brushing against bark and low-hanging limbs. You step over roots, careful not to twist your ankle. One bad step here, and you might not be found for days, if at all. There's no search party. No one is coming for you. You don't even want to think about what lives out here. Wolves. Bears. Or worse, men. It's later in the afternoon when you finally see smoke on the horizon, signs of the trading village. You feel the tiniest flicker of relief. You've made it. Almost. But before you take another step, you hear it. Branches snapping. Soft footsteps behind you. You turn. There are 3 of them. Maybe 4. You can't be sure because the 4th stays hidden just off the path. But you know they are there. Their faces are half covered with hoods and wraps, but you see enough. The smirks. The way one of them taps a knife against his palm like he's keeping time with your heartbeat. They say nothing. They don't need to. You drop the bag slowly. You hold your hands up. You think about begging, but you've seen what happens to those who do. You just try to make yourself as small and non-threatening as possible. Not because you're weak, but because there's no fight to be had here. They're younger, stronger, hungrier, and they don't care about your story. They don't care that you've walked 20 miles. That your hands are cracked from the cold. That your daughter is coughing and your wife has been knitting by candlelight to trade for a bar of soap. They don't care. They grab your sack, tear it open, and take what they want. One of them dumps out the rest on the ground and stomps it into the dirt just to be cruel. The dried fish breaks apart in the mud. The wool gets wet. The cheese, crushed. Then they leave. Just like that. No words. No mercy. You stand there for a while. Longer than you probably should. You stare down at what's left, trying to think, trying to breathe. Your knees are shaking. Not from fear anymore, just from exhaustion and hunger and the cold that's never left your bones. There's a moment when you wonder if you should keep going. If maybe the village will take pity on you. If maybe someone will give you something for free. But you know better. That kind of help is rare, and often comes with a price you can't afford. So you turn around. And you start walking home. Another 20 miles. No food. No trade goods. Nothing to show for your effort but sore feet, a bruised shoulder, and the faint hope that maybe no one will ask what happened when you return. This is what it was like. For people who lived on the edge of survival every day. Who didn't have armies or raiding ships or golden goblets. Just long walks, long silences, and too many moments when life took more than it gave. Still think you'd last a day? You find yourself standing in front of a tall wooden post, weathered and cracked, with a strange pattern of deep cuts and lines carved into its face. It looks important. Someone must have gone through the trouble of chiseling all of that into the wood. You squint, trying to make sense of the shapes, long, straight strokes, sharp angles, tiny branches like trees, all lined up in a way that seems to whisper something. But to you, it's just a mystery. That's because you never learned to read runes. Almost no one in your village knows how. Reading and writing aren't everyday skills here. They are rare. Maybe the local gothy, the priest, or the Jarl scribe knows a few, but most people, like you, just live by memory. Stories are passed down by mouth, not written down. You learn things by watching others. If you forget something, you ask again. If you die, the knowledge often dies with you. So these runes in front of you might be anything. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe it says that a wolf pack was spotted nearby. Maybe it marks a boundary. Stepping past it could mean you're trespassing on another clan's land. Or maybe it's just a name. A prayer. A curse. You don't know. And there's no one around to explain. You try to remember the one time you saw someone carve runes at a feast years ago. It was an old man with a long beard, drunk off mead, scratching a message into a plank of wood using the tip of his knife. He said it was a charm for strength. Or maybe protection. You were a child. Too busy. Women. Everyone has to go. And everyone knows what a dirty stick day feels like. But that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable. Any less awful. It just becomes routine. Some of the older folk tell stories about better days. Of special stones they used to use, or wool scraps if you had a rich family. But for most people, it's wood. Rough, dry, and painful. And even those things are scarce in winter. You learn to carry one in your belt loop sometimes. Just in case. You learn to inspect trees for branches that might snap off clean. You avoid anything green or sticky. You keep your eye out for moss, precious, lovely moss. But mostly, you just prepare to suffer. Because it's not like you can say no. Nature doesn't wait. And neither does the rest of your day. You'll be walking miles, hauling water, pulling sleds, skinning fish, fighting frostbite, and all with a body that hasn't been properly cleaned, hasn't had a proper wipe, and is slowly becoming a vessel for the next infection. You wonder what the gods would say. What Odin or Thor would do. Probably just laugh. Because this is part of Viking life. It's not all glory and adventure and roaring in battle. It's cold. It's uncomfortable. It's crouching in the dirt with a stick in your hand and a prayer in your heart. So no, you wouldn't last a day. Not when something as basic as going to the bathroom feels like a test of your strength and your dignity. Not when wiping becomes a challenge that can leave you bleeding or worse. Not when the best outcome is just walking away without a splinter. And even then, you're still filthy. Still just another body in a longhouse full of smoke, lice, and unwashed skin. It's early morning, and the frost still clings to the grass like pale fingers. You're already sore from sleeping on damp furs, your back aching from the hard-packed earth beneath them, but you drag yourself upright anyway. You can't be late. The chieftain called for a gathering. That usually means a decision has to be made, or someone's being punished, or both. Either way, you go. Everyone does. Not showing up could be seen as a slight. And in this world, a slight, real or imagined, can cost you. The chieftain is already standing by the central fire when you arrive, broad-shouldered and draped in wolf pelts, his beard laced with tiny metal rings that jingle faintly as he turns his head. His gaze is sharp, scanning the crowd. Everyone looks down. You do too, but not fast enough. He notices. You didn't mean to make eye contact. Maybe you were just tired. Maybe your gaze lingered half a second too long. But it was enough. You didn't bow your head properly. You didn't show respect fast enough. And now, you're marked. Later, when the fire has died down and the rest of the village begins to shuffle away, two of the chieftain's men approach you. Their faces are blank, their hands firm on your shoulders as they lead you away from the others. No one stops them. No one dares. You try to speak, to explain, but they're not interested in words. You're brought to the whipping post, an old stump smoothed by time and suffering. You've seen others tied to it before. You never thought it would be you. The rope bites into your wrists as they lash your arms behind your back. Your breath comes in short bursts, cold and panicked. The village gathers again, because pain is a kind of entertainment here. A reminder. A warning. You don't get a trial. You don't get to defend yourself. The chieftain doesn't need a reason. His authority is unquestioned. And disrespect, in his eyes, is reason enough. The first strike comes quick, faster than you expect. A long, leather whip hissing through the air like a snake, then cracking against your back. It burns. The cold air sharpens the pain, drawing a cry from your throat before you can stop it. The second strike is worse. By the third, you're shaking. There's no limit to how many lashes he can order. Sometimes it's 5. Sometimes it's 20. It depends on his mood. On how bad his day was. On whether or not he thinks others need a stronger message. You grit your teeth and try not to scream again. But it's impossible. The crowd watches in silence, some of them wincing, others stone-faced. No one will help you. If anyone steps forward, they risk taking your place. Blood begins to soak through the rough wool of your tunic, seeping down your back, sticky and warm in the freezing air. The pain becomes something else, dull and throbbing, almost separate from your body. You lose count after a while. 10. 15. Eventually, the whipping stops. They cut you loose, and you collapse to the ground. Your knees hit the dirt hard, but you barely feel it. You're breathing in short gasps, dizzy and weak, your back a mess of torn fabric and shredded skin. No one speaks to you as you crawl away. There's no healer waiting with herbs or ointment. If you're lucky, someone might hand you a scrap of linen. If you're unlucky, the wounds will fester. A cut that deep, left untreated, can easily become infected. And in this world, Infection often means death. But worse than the pain is the shame. Now, everyone's seen it. Everyone knows you were punished. They'll whisper about it around the fire, even if they pretend not to during the day. They'll say you should have bowed faster. Should have looked away. Should have known better. And maybe you should have. Because here, respect isn't optional. It's survival. The chieftain rules with fear as much as strength. A word out of place, a wrong look, a bad joke, any of it can bring the whip. You try to sit later that night, but the pain makes it impossible. You lie face down on your damp fur, flinching with every breath, the smoke from the longhouse fire stinging your eyes. And you think, I wouldn't have lasted one day. Because being a Viking isn't all battle and bravery. Sometimes, it's silence, obedience, endurance, biting your tongue even when your pride screams, bowing your head, not because you believe, but because the alternative is pain. And even then, even when you do everything right, it might still not be enough. Night falls early in the Viking world, especially during the long winter months when the sky darkens by mid-afternoon, and the cold creeps in like a heavy fog. After a day spent trudging through snow, or hauling firewood, or just trying to stay alive, the longhouse becomes the only place where there's even a hint of warmth. You duck beneath the low frame of the entrance, smoke curling in the rafters above, the air thick and heavy with the smell of burning peat, stale sweat, dried fish, and old furs. You try to find a spot to sit, maybe on a low stool if you're lucky, or on a log near the fire if one is open. More often, you're just on the packed dirt floor. Around you, men and women slump from exhaustion, children curl beside parents, and someone stirs a pot of thin stew, the kind that tastes more like warm water and ash than anything nourishing. This is when the stories start. It begins with an old man in the corner, his beard tangled and stained, his voice scratchy from years of breathing smoke and sleeping cold. He doesn't look like much. Most nights, he barely speaks. But when he does, the entire longhouse goes quiet. The fire pops. Sparks drift up into the black ceiling. And then he begins. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. His voice carries low, like a whisper traveling through fog. He speaks of trolls that live in the forest. Big ones, with bones like trees and mouths that can swallow a cow whole. They hate the sound of iron, he says, and they'll rip a man's arm clean off if they catch him chopping wood without a charm carved into the handle. The children huddle closer to their parents. You roll your eyes, at first. But then he keeps going. He tells of witches who live by the cliffs, who whisper to the wind and twist the weather with their words. He tells of people cursed for stealing from graves or breaking sacred oaths. How their skin fell off in patches, or how they walked backward into the forest and were never seen again. He speaks of a woman once, who laughed at the gods and claimed she didn't believe in them. Not one bit. She woke up with no tongue the next morning. That's the story. No tongue. Just a red, wet stump and a scream that sounded like a dying goat. You glance around. No one else is laughing. There's something about the firelight. The way it flickers off the old wood beams and makes faces look longer, stranger. The smoke stings your eyes. The wind howls outside. And suddenly, these stories don't feel like stories anymore. They feel like warnings. You tell yourself they're just old tales. But deep down, you know the line between truth and myth is thinner here. Because strange things do happen. People go missing. Wolves gather at the edges of the village. A neighbor's cow drops dead with no wound and no explanation. You see lights in the trees some nights, small flickering things that vanish if you stare too long. So maybe it's not so hard to believe. Maybe there are trolls in the mountains. Maybe the dead do rise sometimes, if they weren't buried with the proper rites. Maybe you shouldn't have laughed earlier when someone knocked on wood after a bad omen. The man finishes his story. Someone adds another log to the fire. It cracks, and everyone flinches, just a little. And then the murmurs return, soft conversations in corners, someone humming under their breath, the kids falling asleep on their mother's laps. But now, the silence feels different. Thicker. You look over your shoulder as you lay back down. Just once. Just to check the shadows near the door. You pull your fur closer around your neck. Not because it's cold. But because you feel something else, an old, crawling feeling, like eyes watching from the dark. Even if you don't believe in trolls and curses, part of you still listens to every word. Part of you still knocks on wood, and avoids the forest at night, and whispers a prayer to gods you barely understand. Because in this world, doubt is dangerous. And you don't want to be the next story someone tells by the fire. The forest waits just beyond the edge of the village, a dense wall of towering pines and twisted oaks cloaked in shadows even in the daylight. It's always there, looming, dark, alive. The trees creak with the weight of snow, their branches heavy, sometimes snapping with the suddenness of a threat. The air is thick with the scent of moss, wet earth, and the faint, lingering smell of wolf. Getting firewood means stepping into that forest. For a Viking, fire isn't just warmth or comfort, it's survival. It keeps the longhouse warm against the bitter cold, cooks the meager meals, wards off the wild animals that prowl nearby, and chases away the darkness that seems to carry all manner of unseen dangers. But the forest doesn't give up its wood easily. Each morning, a few villagers, usually the younger men, are sent out to gather what they can. They take axes, ropes, and a few scraps of dried meat to keep their strength up, though it's never enough. They know the forest is home to wolves. Packs that move like ghosts, silent and swift, hunting in the deep snow. You've heard the stories. Men disappearing in the trees, their screams muffled by the wind, their bodies never found. Others who returned with torn clothing, torn flesh, and haunted eyes. The thought alone makes your heart pound. But it's worse when you're the one chosen to go. You wrap your hands in rough cloth, clutch your axe, and step out from the safety of the village. The cold bites into your face, and every step crunches in the snow. The forest swallows the light as you move deeper, and the sounds of the village fade behind you, replaced by an eerie silence that presses against your ears. Branches scrape against your cloak, and you imagine eyes watching from every shadow. You spot a fallen tree, half buried in snow, its bark brittle and ready to be chopped. You raise your axe and strike, the sound echoing strangely in the stillness. Each chop sends small showers of wood chips flying, the rhythm steady, hard work that makes your muscles ache. But then, there's a howl, a low, haunting sound that curls through the trees like smoke. Your breath catches. You freeze. Another howl replies. Closer this time. You know they're coming. The wolves smell your scent on the wind. You try to finish quickly, chopping faster despite the burning in your arms, but you can't ignore the rising panic in your chest. The wolves are intelligent hunters. They wait, patient and silent, circling. You glance around, but the trees blur together. The snow muffles your footsteps but also slows you down. You know that once the wolves strike, there's little chance of outrunning them. Their strength and numbers overwhelm even the strongest warrior. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You gather as many branches as you can carry, bundling them quickly, but the howls are now all around you. The shadows between the trees twist and move. You realize there's no way back to the village without being spotted. Adrenaline surges. You sprint through the snow, branches clutched to your chest, lungs burning with cold air. You stumble over roots and frozen mud, the wolves' howls ringing closer. You catch glimpses of grey shapes slipping between the trunks, eyes gleaming with hunger. Panic threatens to choke you, but you push harder, every step a battle against exhaustion and fear. Finally, the edge of the village appears, smoke rising from chimneys, the warm glow of fires through windows. You burst through the tree line, yelling for help. Men rush out with spears and torches, shouting warnings, forming a ring to protect you as you collapse, shaking and gasping. But not every trip ends like this. Some don't make it back. Their bodies are found days later, if at all, half hidden beneath snowdrifts, torn by wolf bites. Families mourn quietly, knowing the cold will swallow more before the season ends. Each bundle of firewood brought back comes at a terrible price. You realize this simple task, something so basic, so necessary, is a gamble with death. And the thought of being sent again, knowing you might not return, settles in your stomach like a stone. Because surviving as a Viking isn't just about strength or courage. It's about living with the constant, gnawing fear that even the simplest chores could be your last. The land outside the village had once been generous. Fields of barley and rye stretched out like golden waves under the summer sun. Gardens flourished with turnips, cabbage, and onions, and the livestock, cows, pigs, sheep, provided milk, meat, and wool to see the villagers through the bitter months ahead. For a while, it seemed like the rhythm of life would continue as it had for generations. Planting, growing, harvesting, storing. But nature can be cruel. A winter blight doesn't announce itself. There's no sudden storm, no roaring fire. Instead, it creeps in slowly, like a thief in the night, robbing the land of its bounty one leaf, one stalk, one root at a time. It starts with strange spots on the crops, small black marks that spread quickly. The barley, once thick and golden, begins to thin, the grains shriveled and useless. The vegetables rot in the ground before they can be pulled, the roots turning soft and dark. The air grows damp and cold beyond the usual chill, a persistent frost that bites deeper each day. You watch helplessly as the fields you helped plant become a patchwork of brown and grey, the green fading like a dying memory. The livestock don't fare much better. The pastures freeze, leaving nothing for the animals to graze. You see the cows huddled together, their ribs showing beneath matted fur. The sheep grow weak and restless. Chickens stop laying eggs, their feathers dull and sparse. Hunger begins to gnaw at your belly. Inside the longhouse, the atmosphere thickens with worry. The long winter looms like a giant shadow, and you know that without the food from the fields, the days ahead will be filled with pain and desperation. Your hands tremble as you help with the meager rationing, dividing what little grain remains, scraping the last bits of butter from the churn, boiling watery soups that barely fill the stomach. Every meal is a reminder of what you've lost. The rich taste of fresh bread replaced by stale crumbs. The sweetness of honey and fruit nothing more than a forgotten dream. You see neighbors growing thin and pale, their faces sunken from lack of nourishment. Children cough and shiver, their energy sapped by the cold and hunger. The elders speak in hushed tones about the gods' displeasure, about curses and punishments. Some whisper of raids, desperate clans moving through the countryside, stealing what they can from weakened villages. You listen, but your mind is filled with the crushing reality of starvation. You try to work harder, hunting and fishing, but the animals are scarce. The rivers freeze earlier each year, trapping fish beneath ice. The forests are quiet, save for the occasional snap of a twig or rustle of leaves. Your fingers grow numb as you trudge through snow drifts in search of firewood or game, every journey longer and more dangerous. Each day feels heavier than the last. The longhouse, once a place of warmth and community, now feels like a shelter from a coming storm that refuses to pass. Neighbors die quietly in their beds, their bodies growing cold before anyone notices. The sound of coughing fills the air, mixing with the low murmurs of fear. You think of your family, your friends, and wonder how many more winters you can survive like this. There's no comfort in prayers now, only the stark knowledge that sometimes, no matter how strong or brave you are, nature wins. And when the food disappears, so too does hope. You sleep with one ear open. Always. Even in the depths of winter, when the snow piles high around the village and the cold keeps most people huddled close to their fires, your mind can't relax. You never really sleep soundly. No one does. Because out there, just beyond the trees, over the hills, or up the coast, there's always another village. Another clan. Another group of hungry, angry, desperate people. People just like you. People who want what you have. Maybe you've had a slightly better harvest. Maybe you've still got a few pigs alive. Maybe they heard you still have butter or smoked fish or a few warm furs tucked away. And maybe, just maybe, they think they can take it from you. That's the reality of being a Viking. It's not all sea voyages and battles under a heroic sun. It's long nights staring at the door, listening for footsteps on frost. It's wondering if the howl you just heard came from a wolf, or from men trying to sneak close to your homes. The threat isn't far away. It's just over there. A few hours' walk. A quick ride by horse or boat. And sometimes, they don't knock. There's no warning. One night you're eating cold stew in the longhouse, and the next you wake to smoke, screams, and the crash of wood splintering as your neighbor's door is kicked in. You don't know who they are, not right away. It could be raiders from down the river, a rival family from the mountain valley, or even someone you traded with a few summers ago. It doesn't matter. They want what you've got. and they'll burn your world down to get it. Your first instinct is to grab your axe or spear. But your hands are shaking. You were never trained to fight. You were a farmer, or a fisherman, or a weaver. Now you're expected to defend everything in the pitch black with no warning. The kids are crying. Someone's already dead. The sound of a sword hitting bone is a sound you'll never forget. It's not like in the stories. It's wet. It's heavy. It's horrifying. If you live through it, and that's a big if, your home is probably ash. The thatched roof gone, the animals scattered or stolen, the food taken, your neighbors injured or killed. You might survive, but you're starting over. Again. You'd think people would band together to avoid this kind of chaos. And sometimes they do. Sometimes 2 or 3 villages will form alliances, send scouts out into the woods, keep watch from towers built just for this. But that takes effort. And time. And trust. And not everyone is willing to share their food or risk their best warriors for someone else's problem. And so the fear hangs in the air like smoke. Every stranger who arrives by boat is eyed with suspicion. Every knock at the gate comes with a rush of panic. Even your own people start acting strange. You see neighbors burying supplies or building escape paths into the forest. Because no one really thinks the village will hold if the worst happens. Everyone's got their own backup plan. Sometimes, the attack never comes. You go an entire winter without incident, and for a moment, it feels like peace. But that peace is fragile. It only takes one bad season, one insult, one hungry group to break it. And when that day comes, you'll be back to defending your home with shaking hands and a dull axe. You learn to expect betrayal. Not because people are evil, but because they're starving. Cold. Desperate. You would do the same in their place, wouldn't you? You'd look at a village with food and fire and think, why not take it? So every day you go outside, and you look to the hills. You check the river. You watch the forest line. And you hope. You hope today isn't the day a torch lights your roof. You hope you don't have to fight. You hope you don't have to bury another friend. But you don't sleep well. You never will. There's no grand farewell. No funeral procession down a quiet path. No carved statue in your memory. No sacred monument standing tall in the middle of a field. You just die. Maybe on a muddy trail with a cough that's eaten you from the inside out. Maybe in the corner of the longhouse, too weak to stand, too cold to shiver, too tired to even say goodbye. Or maybe in battle, with a broken rib punching through your lung, and blood bubbling up your throat so thick and fast you can't even scream. However it happens, one thing's for sure, you won't make it to old age. Most didn't. If you're lucky, really lucky, you'll reach your mid-30s. But that's the end of the road for nearly everyone. Life in the Viking Age was brutally short, and not just because of war. Disease, injury, infection, childbirth, starvation, any one of them could take you out, and usually did. Maybe you made it through your childhood, which already means you beat the odds. Babies died all the time. Smallpox, dysentery, fever, infections, you name it. A sniffle in the winter could kill a newborn. A bad scrape on a boy's leg could turn into a festering wound that took him in a week. If you were strong enough to live past 10, people already started calling you tough. But tough doesn't mean safe. By your teens, you were already working like an adult, hauling timber, rowing for miles, butchering animals, digging trenches, patching boats, caring for livestock, cooking over smoky fires, spinning wool, all while watching your back because one slip, one cut, one cough, could be the end. There's no hospital. No medicine. No help. By your 20s, you were probably married or partnered, raising children of your own, and already aching in your joints, missing teeth, carrying scars across your arms and chest. You felt old before you even were. And the years keep piling on. At 32, your body's wrecked. You've had too many hard winters, too many battles, too many injuries that never really healed. Your back feels broken every morning, your knees scream when you squat to lift a bucket, and your skin is tough and cracked from wind, salt, and years of frost. Then one day, you don't get back up. It might be a bad cough that lingers too long, a stomach pain that turns into a death sentence, a fever that burns for days. Or maybe someone swings an axe in your direction and that's that. No warning. No second chance. Just darkness. And when it's over, it's just over. People might say your name for a few weeks. Maybe your kids cry at the edge of the longhouse. Maybe your partner keeps your knife tucked in a belt for a while. But life doesn't stop. It can't. The fields need plowing. The animals need feeding. There's snow to gather, wood to chop, and mouths to feed. One less pair of hands just means more work for everyone else. Your body? It gets wrapped in cloth, if they have any to spare, or a worn-out cloak. They might dig a grave in the frozen ground if the dirt's soft enough. If it's winter, maybe they can't even manage that. Maybe you're buried shallow, or burned quickly on a pile of damp wood, smoke choking the air one last time in your honor. There's no carved stone. Those cost time, skill, tools. You don't get one unless you are someone important. A chieftain. A hero. A man or woman of wealth or legend. You're not that. You were a farmer. A rower. A simple soul who worked hard and died tired. There's no rune stone with your story. No songs passed down with your name. Your life ends like a breath on a cold window. Faint. Quick. Forgotten. Maybe a few people remember your laugh, the way you sang badly when drunk, or how you once saved someone from falling in the river. But time eats memory fast in a place like this. And as the years roll on, your name fades like all the others. Your grave becomes overgrown. The place you slept turns into firewood. The village changes, moves, or disappears altogether. There's no record. No book. No trace. You were just another Viking. And you didn't last. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only, and information provided in the video may be incorrect. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel and like the video. Good night.